with such a screech. You'll shake and shudder in surprise when you hear these zombies shriek. Spooky, scary skeletons and shivers down your spine. A shrieking skull will shock your soul and seal your doom tonight. Spooky, scary skeletons.
Come closer. So, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Anyway, good afternoon and welcome to His Majesty's Royal Palace and Fortress, which is the Tower of London. Come a bit closer, please, ladies. Which is the Tower of London. World Heritage Site. My name's David, I'm one of the Yeoman Warders, and what we're going to do is an external tour of the tower. So, now the word tower refers to a single tower, but actually the Tower of London is a group of towers. So the story of the tower, to my right as it is today, actually begins with the invasion of the Normans in 1066. William the Duke of Normandy's army invade England. He defeats the Anglo-Saxon King Harold II at Battle of Hastings, then is crowned King William I. Now William and his army are an army of occupation in this country. They build a series of defensive towers throughout the land to consolidate their position here. These were generally wooden structures. However, in 1078, William decides to build a far more substantial tower here on the east of London, utilising an old Roman fort. Now that tower, as I say, built here in 1078. Now once they built the original tower, over the years successive monarchs improved the defensive area. There were quite a number of builds, but the main ones, the ones you can still see today, are the inner walls built around 1220 during the reign of Henry III. Then later on these, the outer walls, were built to the reign of his son, Edward I. Now when Edward builds the outer walls, he also constructs this area here, which will be the location of a moat, a large expanse of water. The moat originally was 120 feet wide by 15 feet deep. That's why this tower is called the Middle Tower. It's called the Middle Tower because it used to stand in the middle of the moat. The moat, though, was drained and filled in 1843. Now, the Tower of London here to my right was the centre of government in this country for many years. Notwithstanding that, a home to kings of England, although by the reign of King Henry VIII, they pretty much stopped living here. Things, though, were moved to the tower to keep them safe. Crown jewels were moved here, 1303. The Royal Mint was also here at the Tower of London. The Royal Observatory was here till it moved to Greenwich. The court records were stored at the tower. The Royal Armouries were here at the tower. Where you came into the tower, just down this area here, that side was another line of defence. That was the location of London Zoo, or the Royal Menagerie, until it moved to Regent's Park. Now animals kept to the tower from 1100 to 1832. And we also kept prisoners here as well. Now the word prisoner really is a broad term, but the people kept here incarcerated were important leaders of countries, families, important religious leaders, the gentry more. The first prisoner of the tower was actually a man called Ranulph Flambard, the Bishop of Durham. And the last prisoner of the tower, well, we stopped keeping prisoners here during the mid 19th century, because by then we had a proper prison system. But the last prisoner we have record is Rudolf Hess, Adolf Hitler's deputy. Rudolf Hess was eventually found guilty of the Nuremberg trials as a Nazi and committed suicide in 1983 in Spandau prison. Now, prisoners from the tower, because of their social status, if they were to be executed, they would expect to be beheaded. The last beheading in England was 1747, actually, a man called Simon Fraser. So these people here would expect to be beheaded. Beheadings, though, of these prisoners were not carried out within the tower or by the tower authorities. They were generally carried out, generally on Tower Hill, where that large building is with all the statues on it. That's the old Port of London Authority building. Now in front of that is a large grassed area called Trinity Gardens. And there's still a memorial up there to the public execution site of Tower Hill. It was customary, once the head was removed from the body, to parade it through the streets of London so people knew what would happen to traitors. And it was left on display.
The farmers.
It's the farmers?
Yeah.
Oh, the farmers again. I thought they were sound like footballers.
Maybe.
Maybe getting ready for the weekend. It was like a bit. Farmers on strike, oh my god, where are we going to get our milk from? Anyway, so the heads were taken to London Bridge, which is the bridge here on my left. Don't forget, there has been a bridge in the area of London Bridge since Saxon and Roman times. Don't forget, the River Thames for many years was a lot wider. The bridge to your left, this one here, that's Tower Bridge, That was built in 1894, so that's a very much more modern. So London Bridge was a substantial bridge, but the heads are stuck on the far side of London Bridge. Obviously, as people entered London, they could look up and observe the heads of traitors. But the headless bodies, we keep an eye on those as well. They were buried here in the tower. So, a quick start here, quick synopsis if you will. Let's make our way in the tower and I'll show you where some of these things are, or were. Now stood in an area between that inner and outer defensive wall. Traditionally, in this type of defensive area, the inner walls would be tall and slim, whereas the outer walls shorter but much longer. This area is known as the outward tower, and this tower just comes through stands by the outer wall, and therefore known as the by-ward tower. This area that runs around the Tower of London was also where the Royal Mint was located. Now the Royal Mint in this country made the coins, different organisation made the notes. The Royal Mint was here at the Tower of London from 1100 to 1810 when it eventually leaves the tower. There is an exhibition there where that door is about the Royal Mint. And obviously a very powerful symbol of monarchy to have a coin in your hand with your monarch's representation on it. Therefore, you definitely know who he was. But don't forget, in those days, there wouldn't be pictures or anything like that. Anyway, there's the next fish that bit there. These buildings are still used, as you can see. But when you become a Yeoman Warder like myself here at the Tower of London, you also get a house for the job. So these buildings now are some of the accommodation allocated to Yeoman Warders like myself. Now, making your way down the outside walls, obviously I've already mentioned the Byward Tower stands by the outer wall of the Tower of London, therefore the Byward Tower. To the left of that, you can see the Byward Postern or Standing Hall. That is one of the entrances to the Tower of London via the River Thames. The River Thames was and is a substantial waterway in this country. It starts over by Cricklade, which is near Swindon, covers the whole south of England. Now it's also worth remembering the outside area of the tower, the walking point today, that is quite a new addition to the tower. So these gateways here would go directly to the river, albeit using a small platform. This entrance, though, would be reserved for more VIP members of the gentry and diplomats and even Anne Boleyn to come along, board the barge and then enter the tower by the arch. Moving round again, behind me now, we have the Bell Tower. The Bell Tower was built around 1190 during the reign of Richard I. Richard the Lionheart called the Bell Tower because on top there is a belfry. In the belfry today, it's the oldest surviving curfew bell in the City of London. That bell dates from around 1651. Now the bell itself would generally be rung as a warning. When it was rung, gates were closed, defences man. They also used to ring it 1 hour for any execution outside the Tower of London on Tower Hill. This, the Bell Tower, ladies and gentlemen, is the oldest and strongest survivor of the 13 towers that make up the inner defensive wall. It comprises of 2 chambers, one on top of the other. Now, like all the towers of the Tower of London, it does have a history when it comes to prisoners. Prisoners, when they were brought to the Tower of London, there wasn't a central cell block. What they would do is they'd move into one of the towers, one of the buildings the other side of this wall. All of the towers, the Beeching Tower, the Devereux Tower, the Byward Tower, all have some sort of history when it comes to prisoners. Prisoners brought to the tower quite often live with their families and servants, and they'd also have to pay while they were here as well, which actually up until about the mid-1800s was a common practice even in other prisons in England. But the most notable prison out of the Bell Tower, the lower chamber, sits on the spot. At the same time, the upper chamber, John Fisher, the Bishop of Rochester. Both men incarcerated here on the orders of Henry VIII, who refused to recognise Henry as head of the Church of England. Both men, like so many others, made their way from the Bell Tower up to Tower Hill in around 1535 to have their heads removed from their bodies. Their headless bodies were brought back in the tower. They now lie at rest in the Chapel Royal of St Peter and Vincula, at the side of this wall, but their heads reside quietly at rest somewhere else. Both men canonised as saints in 1935 by the Roman Catholic Church. Actually, one of the main people who saw them to the block that was Thomas Cromwell, Henry VIII's thug, as it were. He also has a headless body in the chapel of St. Peter, executed, getting Henry to marry Anna Cleves, or the Flanders Cowards, poor lady. Anyway, also kept the bells out in the upper chamber was a man called James Scott. James Scott was Duke of Monmouth. James, ladies and gentlemen, was the eldest of 12 to 15 illegitimate children, followed by Charles II. Charles II dies around 1685. He had a lot of children, but no children with his wife. So, throne of England passes to his younger brother, James, the Duke of York, was then crowned James II. Although James Scott, the Duke of Monmouth, always claimed that his mother was actually married to Charles II. Anyway, when Charles II dies, his younger brother becomes King of England as James II. Now, James II was a very unpopular king in England, ladies and gentlemen, and a very outspoken Catholic, which upset his public. So, James Scott, Duke of Monmouth, sent him to 57 years old, raised a rebellion and popular Protestants but they known as the Pittsburgh Rebellion. His army, though, was defeated in the Battle of Sedgemoor in Somerset. James Scott was captured, brought to Tower of London, held in the Upper Bell Tower with his wife, family and servants. He was then taken up to Tower Hill in July 1685, where he was beheaded by a man called Jack Kedge. Now, after his execution, ladies and gentlemen, Monmouth's family requested a painting to be made of him, so Monmouth's head and body were returned to the tower, but their head was then painstakingly reattached by the tower surgeon. The painting of Monmouth was then made, sent the likeness of him, although he's slightly pale. Monmouth now lies quietly in rest at the front of the chapel of St. Peter and Vincula, under the cross. Obviously, he's one of the few people buried in here in the tower with his head quite firmly attached. This is our story. Although I will say at this juncture, during the 17th century, it wasn't unheard of for families to get their relatives after beheadings to reattach their heads. It wasn't unheard of, but not that common. So, more town to the tower, Trains Gate, ladies and gentlemen. Only a short walk from the bell tower, and you can see the belfry quite clear on the bell tower now. Very ornate structure this too. We're still in the outer ward of the Tower of London. This area of the tower is quite often known as Water Lane, because in the early part of the 13th century, during the reign of Henry III, that was the outer walls, and the River Thames would be against those walls. During the reign of his son Edward I, though, he pushes the River Thames back and builds these, the outer walls, and raises that road you're standing on, therefore taking it out of the River Thames. Therefore now called Water Lane. When he built the outer walls, he also constructed this area here, now known as Traitors Gate, although it was originally constructed, it was known as the Watergate. Became known as Traitors Gate somewhere over the Tudor period. And as you can see, ladies and gentlemen, it has been constructed as a far more substantial end to the Tower of London to allow the safe movement of provisions and prisoners into the tower via the River Thames. I may add at this juncture though, remember the outside area of the tower, the wharfs we call it, that is a fairly new addition to the tower, so that's mid sort of 17th century. So these gateways here would go directly to the river. Actually, one of my older colleagues was, I say older colleagues, I'm the oldest one here now. Death is something that comes to us all. And then when somebody dies, someone else then becomes the eldest. So it's time to move on. If I was to die, I'd like to die quietly in my sleep like my father. Which is nice. Not like the people in the bus he was driving. Anyway. Anyway. One of my older colleagues used to say, Watergate, we had it first, and then he was at the Bywood. And he said, I said that joke and nobody laughs. I said, to be honest with you, a lot of people don't even know what you're talking about. I mean, who remembers Henry Nixon? Richard Nixon, sorry, Richard Nixon. Although I've got to be honest, the story of I don't want to knock the Secret Service or the FBI in America, but
go ahead.
Some bloke was just walking around, the door's open. And then they all sung like canaries. It's a great story. And obviously England, we have a lot more because we've been around a lot longer. Anyway, yeah, Watergate. I've gone off on a tangent there and I'm sorry about that. So this would have gone straight into the river. Became known as Traitors Gate over the Tudor period, which I think I've already mentioned. Obviously it was a busy time for us when it came to traitors. Although, to be fair, I don't think it may have come from the term Traitors Gate because we used to trade with the local public through boats and things, so it could come from the term Traders Gate. And names change, all the towers, their names change over the years anyway. Now, above Traitors Gate is St Thomas's Tower, named after a man called Sir Thomas à Becket. Sir Thomas à Becket was the Archbishop of Canterbury, murdered in Canterbury Cathedral on the orders of Henry II, Edward I's great-grandfather. Why they called it Thomas à Becket or Thomas Tower is because when it was originally constructed, it kept falling down, and the builders claimed that the ghost of a Thomas à Becket kept knocking it down. Obviously, their poor management and building skills were blamed on a ghost. But they called it St Thomas's Tower, and if you do go in there, at the far end, there's a small oratory. An oratory is a small place of worship reserved for high-status buildings. That's called a Thomas à Becket oratory. And after all that was constructed, apparently it never fell down again. Obviously, the threat of being beheaded if it did fall down again, obviously, stimulated them to a more productive building. Let's leave that there. Above it, this building that sits on top of it, which is known as the Medieval Palace. This would have been Edward I's royal palace. He'd have moored his royal barge here, remember that was straight to the river, and made his way to his royal palace. Now you've got to remember that really kings of England, even into the Tudor period, they didn't really stay in one place very long. They kept moving around. So Edward I, although he was king for some time, probably only spent a total of 2 weeks in the tower over his entire reign. When he did come here, he lived in here. Now, while you'll visit the Tower of London, though, ladies and gentlemen, you can get entry to this area by the stairs to my left, and those people who demonstrated the process perfectly. As if by magic. Oh, it's going the wrong way. It is a one-way system.
System has failed.
What is that about? They're probably French.
That's right. Going left.
Are you French?
Wait.
I just saw your face. Look at me. I went, oh. If you are French, just be désolé. It's just the French are sort of more of a, you know, flamboyant. They don't seem to bother with signs and things. Hey, there we go. They don't follow the rules. We don't dislike them for that. We just think they're eccentric. Anyway, there we go. Hello. She seemed nice. I'm always after a future Mrs. X, Mrs. Coleman. Now, pass through the medieval palace here. Eventually passing through, you'll eventually cross over into this, the Upper Wakefield Tower. The Wakefield Tower, ladies and gentlemen, although it was built in the early 13th century, 12th century, sorry, it was named after a man called Sir William de Wakefield, who was keeper of the court records here at the Tower of London. During the medieval period, the court records were stored at the Tower to the mid to late 19th century, then moved to the Reformed Public Records Offices. So once you enter here, at the back of that room is a spiral staircase that will take you up onto the southern, eastern, and eventually northern ramparts or battlements, also known. These are all open to visit, ladies and gentlemen. And as you walk along the battlements, you'll go through the towers like the Langthorne Tower, the Salt Tower, and all of those towers, as you pass through them, have smaller exhibitions about aspects of life and the history here at the tower. Isn't that lovely? There's a fair bit of real estate up there as well, by the way. As you are looking that way, you can see the Cradle Tower, another end to the tower by the river. But this side of the Cradle Tower is a set of toilets. They are the ladies' toilets. I'm worried about you three. I'm worried about you three. You were very confused earlier. I don't know, it's bothering that. Well, you're very well dressed, so I thought French, but you're Italian. What? Dutch? Okay. I got sacked from the mountain rescue team in Holland. Sacked from the mountain rescue team.
Yeah.
There ain't no mountains in
This
Oxford.
side of the Cradle Tower is a set of toilets. They are the ladies' toilets. Proceed past the ladies' toilets towards the Salt Tower. That is the gentlemen's toilets, and I'll point out the other main set of toilets later. Okay? Obviously not historic. We're back this way to the Wakefield Tower, as I say, named after a man called Sir William de Wakefield. The most notable prisoner held up there was a man called Henry VI. Now, Henry VI imprisoned the Tower during a very long period of turbulence in this country called the Wars of the Roses, although the background and the back of the Wars of the Roses went on from the 14th century a lot further. But it was basically a civil war which went on for about 30 years. So it was fought between the houses of York and Lancaster. So, the Yorkist king, Edward IV, White Rose of York, captures the Lancastrian king, Henry VI, Red Rose of Lancaster. The Battle of Barnet in 1470 brings him to the Tower of London and imprisons him there, where Henry VI remained until the 21st of May 1471, when he was murdered. Now, Henry VI, when he was King of England though, had founded Eton School and King's College, Cambridge. Isn't that lovely? So every year, on the anniversary of his death, the deans of those colleges come here to the Tower and they lay floral tributes of lilies and roses at the site where their founder was murdered. Isn't that lovely? Not so nice on him, but the rest was all too bad. So obviously now, the Yorkist king remains King of England, Edward IV. He dies in 1483 of natural causes, dysentery being natural in those days. He leaves, though, two heirs to the British throne, two sons, 12-year-old uncrowned Edward V and his younger 9-year-old brother, Richard the Duke of York. Now, the two boys are declared illegitimate by Parliament, and their uncle is crowned Richard III in their place. The boys are brought to the Tower of London for their own protection, and they live to the tower behind it, which is now known as the Bloody Tower. Although, when it was originally constructed in the early part of the 13th century, 1300s, 1320, let's go with that, confused myself. It was originally known as the Garden Tower, then became known as the Tower of Blood, and then later the Bloody Tower. When all these names changed, a bit unclear. Anyway, the two boys are now living in that tower, but by the autumn of 1483, they had vanished, never to be seen again. Now, their uncle Richard III, for those who don't know, he was killed 2 years later at the Battle of Bosworth Field in 1485. His place in the British throne was taken by a man called Henry Tudor, who at the Battle of Bosworth Field was declared Henry VII, first the Tudors. Now, another famous prisoner kept to the Bloody Tower was Sir Walter Raleigh. Now, Sir Walter Raleigh was imprisoned in the Tower for 13 years by James I under a charge of treason. Sir Walter Raleigh is a good example of how generally prisoners are kept in the Tower. Sir Walter Raleigh was locked in that tower with his wife, 2 children, and a number of servants to look after his everyday needs. Isn't that lovely? What happened to him after that wasn't so nice, but let's leave that bit there. Positive, later on, not so good. Anyway, let's now make our way through the Bloody Tower archway to the middle and inner ward of the Tower of London. At least you're not going to lose that stick, are you?
Is that one? No.
you today, man. Oh God, yeah, loads of people. In fact, it was very. I think realistically, only between sort of 80 to 100 people were executed in the tower. But saying that, they didn't really take any records of sort of more peasanty type people going to the tower, of which they locked nearly 100 in the basement of Wakeful Tower, and then boarded them in, and they all starved to death. There were some very unfortunate other things with people in the basement of the Wakeful Tower, where they locked in there something like 600 people, at which point most of them starved to death, and those that did live were brought out and hung later. So we don't talk about those, just talk about the posh people. So if I'd come here, there was also a lady called Alice Tankerville, who during the reign of Henry VIII, her and her husband, who was an Irishman, were robbing boats in the Thames, which was known as piracy. And they got caught, but unfortunately there was no charges. But Alice Tankerville came to the tower. I think her maiden name was Tankerville. Anyway, I mentioned about Alice Turner then. Anyway, the point was that she was brought to the tower. They were released because there was no evidence. But then her husband scarpered off to Ireland, where he was eventually executed for something else. But she then was stayed in London because she made friends with one of the jailers, who was Yeoman Warder of the tower. And in fact, she was kept. Then she was rearrested, and she was kept in the building around here. But of course, she was a very attractive woman, apparently. And the Yeoman Warder who'd met her, was a lot younger than her, was very enamoured with her. So one night, he assisted her to escape the tower. Oh. But they didn't get very far before they were captured. Now, Alice Tankerville and her boyfriend were then hung in metal cages on the walls outside the tower. That was the punishment for pirates, to await the tide to take 3 turns of the tide. But because he was a Yeoman Warder, before they put him out there, they pulled his arms and legs out of the sockets. There we go. There was some pretty grim. But when it comes to the posh ones, we didn't, we know, all very nice to. So, other peasants we weren't very nice to at all. Anyway, moving on.
All in a day's work.
All in a day's work. Who did you kill today? About 13. Anyway, I'm going to get letters over this. Get a letter. You're going to get me a letter.
Sorry, but
That's all right. Are you Canadian, are you?
yeah,
Oh, I thought so.
we can't mail a letter though because we're on strike.
Ah.
You're lucky that
Oh,
way.
you're on strike over there, are
Oh
you?
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
We have strikes.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I didn't think the Americans went on strike.
No,
They were very...
Canadian.
Oh, Canadians. I recognise your accent.
Same
She says,
Canadian.
a boot. I got stolen due to a desert storm. I was in Canada, and they tried to fly me back to Germany to go to Saudi Arabia for a desert storm. And I was stuck in Canada with 2,000 guns, which was funny because I wasn't the person who had the most guns. Then eventually they flew me to New York Airport. Again, I didn't have the most guns.
Clearly not.
Now, in the whaling station in Canada, the film every day for 2 weeks we went to see was Hunt for Red October. Then from the flight from Canada to New York Airport, guess what the in-flight movie was?
Oh,
Then we go on we couldn't say the word gun in New York, because apparently they have little things up there, so we had to say chocolate bars. And then from the flight from New York Airport to Germany, the in-flight movie, at which point we had a mini riot, at which point the pilot said, so they put on something like, I don't know, Hansel and Gretel meet somebody as a cartoon, everybody else in the plane was really, we were there going, and then we flew our military flight from Germany to Saudi Arabia, escorted by 2 fighters because we're at war, and the in-flight movie.
not again.
Driving through the desert in my tank, ready to invade. The Americans will have everything in a little tent. Coke machines, Arnie Schwarzenegger giving weight stuff. We were sat in the desert in the middle of nowhere, and the bloke says, "Do you want to come in here?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "A film on." I went, "What's the film?" He goes,
Say the magic word.
"That's Travis Wright." Anyway, yeah, that was quite funny actually. Even to this day, I can't watch it. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen, I went off on a huge tangent there, and I really apologise. So, ladies and gentlemen, now in the shadow, well, the Americans, see the Canadians here, the crown jewels are yours.
Well, yes, we came to collect them as
And
a matter
also-
of fact.
There used to be a Canadian Yeoman Warder here
We had
called
to
Nap.
collect them by hand.
There was a Canadian Yeoman Warder here called Nap, K-N-A-P-P. There was, yeah, after the war.
Oh, okay.
So the crown jewels are yours as part of the Commonwealth, you know
Thank you.
that. They're not the Americans, they wouldn't pay the taxes.
On our ship.
I can see a letter, I can definitely see it. So now, ladies and gentlemen, we are now at the shadow of the White Tower. Now, the White Tower was the original structure I mentioned earlier, built on the orders of William the Conqueror in around 1078, utilising an old Roman defence position which was already here, although that was a lot smaller. The building of the White Tower behind me took around 20 years, and the building work itself was overseen by Gandalf. And Gandalf was the Bishop of Rochester. Before I got any letters, yes, he was more famous for his work in Mordor. Hit the tower! He was a French priest, by my add. Now, the walls are 92 feet high, the ranging thickness to 15 feet thick at the bottom, total 11 feet thick at the top. In each corner is a tower, 3 are square like these, the other side, but on the northeast corner, that is a much larger tower, that's circular, and on the top floor of that tower, where the Royal Observatory was first established here at the Tower of London, before it moved to Greenwich in the later 17th century. That tower, still named after the first person to run the Royal Observatory, is known as the Flamsteed Tower. The windows, though, you can see, these are not normal. The windows were replaced by Sir Christopher Wren in the 17th century. There's 4 levels, 3 you can see very clearly. So the top floor is where kings of England would have lived when they were resident here at the tower. The floor below that is where the king would have had a council chamber, a banquet hall, and on the far side of that level is the Chapel Royal of St John the Evangelist. And it was in that tower that the Royal Observatory was first established here at the Tower of London. Sorry. Start again, because I was on the wrong part of the script. Did you get that? I did get you missed that, did you? So, the top floor is where kings of England would have lived. The floor below that is where the king would have had a council chamber and a banquet hall. But on the far side of that level is the Chapel Royal of St John the Evangelist, and it was in that chapel that the Order of the Bath was first established, one of England's highest orders for chivalry. And may also add at this juncture, it was on that level where Anne Boleyn was sentenced to death by her uncle Thomas Howard. I've been here about 15, 16 years now, so sometimes when I'm saying stuff, I just look at people's faces and look confused, I know I've got something wrong. Sometimes when I say things funny, they don't laugh, I also realise, well, I'm not funny. The floor below that, sometimes when people laugh, I think, sorry. The floor below that, the larger windows, now that area would be for servants' retainers. There's another level to the White Tower below ground, mainly used for stores and provisions. But as time went on, that then became the location of the dungeons and torture chambers. Today, it's the home of the gift shop.
Same thing.
There is an I can see letters. Somebody actually wrote in a complaint when I said that. Anyway, so there is an exhibition, 2 instances of torture to my left, on the left of the Bloody Tower archway where the light is, just down there. It's only a small exhibition about instances of torture. Now, the White Tower contains the majority of the exhibitions here at the Tower, so it is a must-see while you're here at the Tower of London. The entrance is on the far side of the White Tower. On the south here, there's a wooden staircase to allow you entry to the White Tower. Halfway up the wooden staircase is a small doorway, and it was in that location, in and around June 1674, where excavation work uncovered the skeletal remains of 2 boys. Said to be Edward IV's sons, princes, who vanished from the Bloody Tower in the autumn of 1483. Now, there was an investigation done by Thomas Cromwell, apparently, and 2 men admitted they'd murdered the boys, originally buried under some stairs, then dug up and reburied in the White Tower, the entrance to the White Tower. The reason being that the Chapel Royal of St John the Evangelist makes the area of the White Tower consecrated ground. Those remains were taken to Westminster Abbey, I don't know if I mentioned this, but they're now interred in a place called Innocents Corner, the area named by Charles II. Okay, Westminster Abbey is a very good visit, but it does get very busy. So there we go, White Tower. Now moving over to the right, you can see Tower Bridge. Tower Bridge was built about 1894, so it is one of the newer bridges on the River Thames, I might add. This side of Tower Bridge, you can see these, the school children with their fluorescent jackets on, walking on the walls. So I've shown you how to access that area through the Wakefield Tower, along the wall to the Langthorne Tower, then up to the Salt Tower, then along the far side, and eventually you'll come down just over here where the gap is. So it's a substantial area to view in the tower. This side of that walkway though, you can see these cages. They are the cages, homes of some of the Tower Ravens. We keep 7 ravens at the Tower of London. To see them a bit more clearly, if you go through this arch here, left and first left, there's a board there to tell you about them, and you can see them there in the cages. I may add at this juncture, those cages are actually open. They can go out if they want. They're not locked in. So I see Spare in there, and there's George and Poppy are in there. Yeah, they don't want to go out for some reason. They're not prisoners. There's another raven flying around here called Bramwin, and he's quite nasty, so they stay in there because he attacks them when they come out. I know. Bramwin was escaped 2 years ago, and we haven't been able to catch him. There are things in play. Once they fly, you've got a lot of problems. And now, the ravens, so the story of the ravens is quite a peculiar one. During the reign of Charles II, apparently, 1660 to 1685, November, he initially wanted to clear the ravens. He was reminded, apparently there was a legend, that if the ravens leave the tower, the White Tower will come to dust, a great disaster would befall the country, the monarchy would fall. So Charles then decreed at all times we must keep 6. We keep 7, one just in case. I know.
One floating about.
Makes perfect sense. Is anyone from England here today?
Yeah.
When Tony Blair came up for election, we had one that was looking a bit ill, so we actually borrowed 2 ravens for the election. Knocked us up to 8, honestly. The funny story about that was that in Holland, or Denmark, I'm not sure, one of those, one of the countries in sort of north of Europe. Anyway, I think it was Denmark actually. No, Holland, sorry. Anyway, they had a zoo there and they bred a raven, 2 ravens, and they were nuts. So they said to London Zoo, do you want them? And London Zoo went, yeah, all right, we'll use them for the kiddies. The little Dutch would go, yeah, go on then. So they came in, within a week, these 2 ravens were like sacked. So they gave them to us. We had them for about 6 months. We went, well, having these 2, they're nuts. So we didn't get rid of them like that. We sent them to someone else. But of course, when we had this problem with Tony Blair, we had to get 2 back. So all the drama we had previously, we had back again. I'm trying to think of his name. He's dead now, but he was one of our main breeding ravens, actually. Anyway, so ravens in the wild, they get to about the age of 10 to 12. Don't really do much better than that. In the tower, usually between 15 and 20. Moonin died a couple of years ago. She was 24. So they do really well out of the tower. They're not wild ravens. We get them from rescue centres. I say over for London Zoo a few years ago, and places like that. So they're tame-ish ravens, and even if we get a wild one, we stick them in the land. They also go, well, this is what we're supposed to do. There we go. So you feed them in the morning. Come back just before the public come in, open the cages, let them out, do whatever they want to do. Usually about 2:30, 2:45 this time of year, you go over, they're all sat in the cages there, waiting, little aprons on the eyes. Jubilee in the corner over there was next bit of motivation to come down, but the other day I was just walking around here, went to the cages, and he was sat in there as well, going, come on. And there you go. They like Marlborough Light. I know, yeah. Marlborough Light. No, I'm joking. Anyway, there we go, Raven. There's quite a few funny stories about ravens. There was one called Charlie. Oh, that's Bradwin. He's not a very nice flea.
He's not a very nice man.
No, he's not. He won't come down. He won't come down to me anyway. We had a raven here called Charlie a few years ago. and he was sacked from the tower because he kept eating the TV aerials. We had another raven here, his name I can't remember. He attacked the governor's wife and was immediately sacked. We had another one called Grog, my favourite of all the ravens. I've never met him though. We let his wings grow. He'd been here about 24, 25 years. So we let his wings grow, and he flew off and went and lived in a pub in Whitechapel called the Rose and Punch Bowl. The Rose and Punch Bowl is now gone, as is Grog. My personal, because I look after them, we had two ravens escape the tower. They let their wings go a bit too much and they flew off. Moonin went that way. She was 24. She unfortunately died. But George went that way to Westminster Abbey. So anyway, a couple of days later, I was walking down to Westminster Abbey in the grassed area, and I went, "Where's George? Come on." So she came down. I picked her up, trying to get a taxi with a raven on your arm. Come on in. So I brought her back to the town, and she's there now. That little mark there, the bite in there, that's still George. Thank you. Yeah. That one's Jubilee. We've got Poppy just there. Or a massive one on my chest. That's good as well. Anyway, there you go. If you go through the arch, left and left, I wouldn't say they're tame, but you can get quite close. But just be aware. Obviously, they've only got a massive, great sharp thing on their face to tell you you're a bit too close. The Yeoman Warders, like myself, been in the tower for hundreds of years. In 1826, though, which is relevant today, the Duke of Wellington became the constable of the tower. He decided that he would only recruit Yeoman Warders for the military, process we still follow. So, if you want to be a Yeoman Warder of the tower, you must have served a full career in the military. I was 26 years in the army. While serving, gained recognition for Distinguished Good Service. I had a long service medal, and got to senior non-commissioned officer. I was a sergeant major in the Guards. Once you become a Yeoman Warder of the tower, you get a house as well, which is lovely. I'm in a 4-bedroom, 2 bathrooms. And also, you don't have to retire as long as you do the job. We're often known as Beefeaters. Why we're called Beefeaters, I don't know. I've spent most of my time in the tower disappointing school children saying, I don't. The blue uniform wear today is Victorian, first introduced in 1858. We still have a much more splendid red uniform, which we wear on special occasions. I last wore mine when marching in front of the carriage at King Charles III's coach. There we go. So, I've now shown you where kings of England would have lived. Let's have a short walk to Tower Green. I'll show you where some of their relatives died. Now is the knife, now is large, black and white.
Okay, what they going to do?
40. A cube structure. When the very few.
What is you have to cover through. This double path here, you will enter the... It's going to be open again, somebody just noticed it's closed. There has been a chapel on this site since Saxon times. That burned down in the fire. This chapel here to my left was constructed on the site of the original chapel around 1519. All the people beheaded outside the tower and those inside, and people from the local parish, are all now buried in this chapel, but the majority are buried in the crypt, which is not open to the public. Now, when the chapel's going to be open again today, I'm not entirely sure. It'll be open soon. Okay, this is Charles. So that's the chapel. Moving round to the right, again, we have this, the Waterloo block, built in 1845, originally constructed as a barracks for 1,000 soldiers. Although when the army, when national service finished in this country, the army en masse pretty much moved out of the tower. Although we still have a military contingent at the tower, there's 2 on duty there, one done by the King's House. And obviously we have a fixed guard here as well. They are real soldiers, one of the guards battalions, I can't see the front from here. They are real rifles. We do keep ammunition in the tower, but obviously we only give it to on special occasions, like when we have a birthday, all around drunk, have a barbecue, you know, something. No, they do have ammunition, but obviously we only do it for specific security situations. To be fair, there's so many armed police around here, we don't really get them. The far end of the square, that, ladies and gentlemen, is the Museum, the Royal Regiment of Fusiliers. They are British Infantry Regiment, founded here at the Tower of London in 1685. Formed in response to the Monmouth Rebellion, James Scott, I've already told you about, which was a very serious rebellion in this country. Now, between the two is a gap. You go through that gap to the left. That's the location. The second main set of toilets here at the tower. And the first one's down by the Plate Tower. And the gentleman's by the Salt Tower. As you are looking that way, you can see a wall. The other side of the wall is now a carport. There used to be a rifle range. And we utilised that rifle range in the First and Second World War to shoot German spies. Not shot by the Yeoman Warders, shot by the military garrison. Now, let's come back to this area here, ladies and gentlemen. So there were 6 beheadings here. There were other executions. There were 3 Scottish shoulders, shot against the wall over there. Bits and pieces there, but I'll just talk about the 6 executions. So the first of the group is probably the most famous, Anne Boleyn, Henry VIII's second wife. Beheaded with a sword, not the block and axe. Her head and body were placed in the same coffin. She's been thrown to the chapel, which unfortunately is closed to the public for the rest of the day. Sorry? Not there, she's out in front of the chapel. 5 years later, Margaret Pole, the Countess of Salisbury, was to lose her life doing the Green. The following year, 13th of February 1542, 2 executions on the same day. First, Henry VIII's 5th wife, Queen Catherine Howard. Second, her lady in waiting, Jane Boleyn, the Viscountess of Rochford, Anne Boleyn's sister-in-law. 12 years after that, 1554, during the reign of Mary I, or Bloody Mary she became known, Lady Jane Grey, made away from number 5, which is the grass doing here. I know, very misogynistic of you. So I'm going to throw that in for you, won't I? Lady Jane Grey. Now, the last beheading, a man called Robert Devereux, 2nd Earl of Essex. Nothing to do with me, it was previous management. During the reign of Elizabeth I. Robert Devereux, 2nd Earl of Essex, playing fast and loose with the Queen's affections. Lucky boy finds his way into the tower. There we go, he's beheaded as well. He's made in front of the chapel. Now, may I add this, James, the last execution of the tower, we don't mention Jimmy Hoffa back in the 40s, so that's. I said that the other day, and I was going, who's he? Anyway, the last execution of the tower was August 1941, though, a man called Joseph Jacobs, who was a German spy. There is an exhibition about him in the White Tower. So obviously, I've very much touched the surface of the history here at the tower. I've shown you how to access some of these buildings and areas so you can find out more for yourself. If it all becomes a bit much, to the tree in the corner, turn right, down the hill. On the right is the entrance to the White Tower, on the left is the cafeteria. It sells alcohol, I just said. There's a lovely cafe, but obviously I apologise in advance for lovely prices. Now, have a lovely visit to the Tower of London, a safe journey home, and I hope you get your money's worth at your visit here today at the Tower. Thank you very much.
Thank you.